This morning, the Kansas abortion vote, where support for a woman's right to an abortion overwhelmingly passed. What does it mean for November, especially in Texas, where abortion is banned? Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher is with us. Plus, backlash continues for Senator John Cornyn for his work on gun safety legislation. The latest move from county-level Republican parties across the state. Collin County GOP Chair Abraham George joins us. Also, although violent crime is down, homicides are up. Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson talks public safety with us as a new budget cycle begins. And why is there a showdown brewing between Governor Abbott and the mayor of Washington, D.C. about the Texas-Mexico border?
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for watching today. I'm Teresa Woodard in for Jason Whiteley on this Sunday morning. We begin, as always, with a few political headlines from across Texas. A reversal from Texas Senator Ted Cruz gets a bill to help wounded veterans across the finish line a few days later than anticipated. The bill will provide care for Iraq and Afghanistan war vets injured by toxic burn pits. It did have wide bipartisan appeal, but then Republicans, including Cruz and Senator John Cornyn, pulled their support, citing a funding technicality. Veterans were angry at Cruz for fist-bumping a fellow Republican after the bill's defeat. When it came back up for a vote, Cruz did vote yes. Cornyn had COVID, so he was isolating and could not vote. Former President Donald Trump headlined CPAC in Dallas this weekend. Governor Greg Abbott, the Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, as well as dozens of other high-profile Republican lawmakers and media personalities also spoke, as did Hungary's controversial Prime Minister, known for making racist remarks. CPAC is the Conservative Political Action Conference. There were protests outside the Anatole Hotel where the conference was held. State leaders are giving families a little break with Texas's annual tax-free weekend. It is still underway, wraps up tonight. It provides a small bit of welcomed relief amid record inflation. As long as they're less than $100, most clothes, shoes, school supplies, backpacks are tax-free through midnight. Last week, people in Kansas voted overwhelmingly to protect a woman's right to an abortion in their state constitution. There's a lot of debate over what this might mean for November's general election, especially in a state like Texas, where abortion is banned. That is where we begin our conversation with Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. She is a Democrat. She represents Texas's 7th congressional district, which covers much of western Houston.
Congresswoman, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. I'm glad to be with you.
Tell us what you think the referendum in Kansas means for Texas.
Well, I think the referendum in Kansas is consistent with what we've seen in Texas, was that a majority of voters in the state want to make sure that women have access to abortion care when they need it. The voters in Kansas rejected a constitutional amendment that would change their constitutional right. And we've seen the same thing here in Texas, including in a recent poll that UT conducted in June, that the majority of Texans want to make sure that Texans have the choice to decide whether and when to become parents.
You authored a bill that would protect a woman's right to travel for an abortion, passed the House, seems unlikely to get out of the Senate. Do you regret that Congress has never made abortion rights part of law, and instead we've seen the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, during the time I've been in Congress, it has been a priority to codify the framework that we see in Roe v. Wade that Americans have come to rely on for the last 50 years. And we've seen this House of Representatives do that in September and vote again just a few weeks ago to do the same after Roe v. Wade was overturned. I've heard for years people thought that it would never happen, but it is important for people to know that the right and to access to abortion care has been chipped away at in the states, including ours. And so we've seen in Texas since last September the crisis it has created in terms of access to reproductive health care. And now we're doing everything we can in the House to make sure that we ensure that right for people in all 50 states, including here in Texas. And what we're also seeing, and the reason I introduced that right to travel bill, is because now we're hearing legislators in our state say that they want to prevent women from leaving the state to seek that care in states where it's legal. So it's very important that we fight back against these measures that, again, are not the views of the majority of Texans.
Do you feel like this vote in Kansas signifies anything for November here in Texas?
Well, certainly it shows that people are paying attention to this issue. This is the first time we've seen the Supreme Court take away rights of American citizens. And here, where we saw people in Kansas trying to take that right out of their constitution, the people responded resoundingly that that is not what they want in their state. And I think the same is true here in Texas. We believe in our individual liberty and autonomy and freedom to make our own choices as Texans. And I do think that Texans are motivated and understand the stakes and need to understand the kinds of things that have happened and will continue to happen in our legislature if we don't speak out about what we prioritize and what we want to see our legislators doing.
We are approaching, it's unbelievable to say this, the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. That major Texas coastline protection project, the Ike Dike, has been passed, it's been approved, but not funded. Do you believe it will be funded?
Well, I do think that we have made great progress. And this is something that Texans have been working on for more than a decade. And we've worked on it in various ways, including at the state level. The state has authorized a special district to participate and be the local sponsor. Now it's made its way through and been authorized in the House and the Senate. The House and the Senate have to come together to get a final bill across the finish line, but I'm sure the project will be authorized. And then, as you said, the fight begins for the funding. And we know that that will be a challenge. It will be a long process. But I believe we have a great case to make. It's a case I've been making since I got to Congress about the importance of funding this coastal protection, not just for the Houston region, not just for the state of Texas, but for the entire country. And I think that there are traditional ways, but it is difficult. So one of the things I've been working on is coming up with new funding sources, new streams where we can help protect the coastline here in Texas and all the coasts in the country. And so I'm very excited about the work we're doing there, and think that we just need to keep working in every way we can to get the funding to make sure that our communities are protected.
Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
There is a showdown brewing between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser. It's actually over the Texas-Mexico border, even though D.C. is more than 1,700 miles from that border. Let's bring in Matthew Watkins from the Texas Tribune now to talk about this. Matthew, Governor Abbott started busing migrants to D.C. and other cities a few months ago, but now the mayor says her city is overwhelmed. So is this working in Governor Abbott's favor?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly what Governor Abbott wants. He's been saying that the migration across the Texas border has been overwhelming local resources for years. So now, we're seeing that argument has often been dismissed by more liberal cities, governments, and things like that. And now we're seeing a Democratic mayor kind of coming out and raising concerns about this. So I think this is kind of playing out exactly how Governor Abbott would like it to.
Yeah, and I know he's now invited the mayor of New York and D.C. to come see the border for themselves. This week, the Texas Tribune reported pretty extensively on the Texas juvenile justice system. Really in terrible shape. Reports of kids in custody alone, sometimes locked up for 23 hours. Are state leaders going to do anything about this?
There's a hearing next week about this in which they'll discuss it, and there's been some talk about getting TJJD more money. I think the question is, how much urgency are they acting with? Of course, we just talked about the border, in which the government has, funded and funneled billions of dollars to it in recent years in emergency measures. We haven't seen that same kind of reaction to a crisis of, kids in the custody of the state of Texas.
Sad. All right, Matthew, thank you so much. We'll see you again in just a few minutes. Still to come, more backlash against Senator John Cornyn. Collin County GOP Chair Abraham George on a censure for the senator. And curbing crime is top of the agenda for Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson. He talks public safety and a little bit of football. Also, keep up with Texas politics by listening to our Y'all-itics podcast. Download, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. After Texas Senator John Cornyn helped pass gun safety legislation through Congress, the first in 30 years, he got booed at the state Republican Party convention. Backlash continues. Now, county GOP parties are censuring the senator. Collin County did, and the chair of the Collin County GOP, Abraham George, joined us from Plano. Thank you for being with us this morning, Mr. George. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
What did Senator John Cornyn do to deserve censure?
Well, it's It's not one specific thing, but the recent issue is the red flag laws that he was working on. It is an infringement on our rights, and Washington politicians have been doing this for a long time, and it is time people are just sending a message back.
There are many Americans, presumably many Texans, who do believe that maybe something needs to change with gun laws, especially after Uvalde. Do you worry at all that this position you're taking will be looked at as extremist?
Not at all. I mean, we're not asking the Senate or the House to create new laws. What we're asking is to respect the Constitution as it is. See, the most of the time when our legislators create laws, it always infringe on the rights of the law-abiding citizens. The criminals don't care about having a red flag laws. They don't care about putting a free zone, gun-free zone. They don't look at those signs. I mean, they're criminals. They're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. So the answer is not to remove more guns from law-abiding citizens. It is to create more programs where we can actually address some of these issues.
Other counties have also censured Senator Cornyn. Is this a coordinated effort?
Not from our side, it wasn't. We know there are other counties done this, and we also know there are other counties working on it. But we really did not coordinate with anyone. It was just us.
What do you hope to accomplish with it? Is it just to drum up some publicity and try to maybe put pressure on Senator Cornyn? Or do you really hope that there's action that comes out of this?
I hope so, because ultimately this is a message to all of our legislators that this is a representative government, not the other way around. So this is not a publicity stunt. It is a clear message to all of our legislators.
You talk about it being a representative government. One example recently, Senator Cruz was among a group of Republicans that kind of held up for a few days at least that burn pit legislation that would help wounded warriors. Would you ever consider a censure for something like that? Because that is something that it felt like the great majority of Americans were in favor of.
If it comes down to an issue, something like that, we're not looking at one senator or one representative. We are looking at a broader issue where Washington politicians consistently damage our country in both an economy and on our rights. So it's not about Senator John Cornyn or Ted Cruz or any other senators. It's basically about American people. It's about Texans.
All right, Abraham George, chair of the Collin County GOP. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for being with us.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Violent crime is down in the city of Dallas, but homicides are up. Public safety is being debated all across Texas, especially as a new budget cycle begins for many cities in the coming weeks. That is among the topics Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson talked about when he joined us from his office at City Hall downtown.
Mayor Johnson, thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate you being with us.
Of course.
Let's talk about some of your public safety initiatives. It feels like every weekend in the city of Dallas, we report on multiple shootings across the city, but oftentimes police are going back to the same location week after week. How can you combat those nuisance areas that seem to be contributing to a lot of crime in the city?
Well, I'll tell you what, the fact of the matter is that violent crime is actually falling in the city of Dallas. And it's one of the few, if not only, major cities in the United States, or top 10 cities in the United States that is seeing its crime continue to fall. One of the things that we're looking at now is in some of our entertainment areas where there are repeat offenders, if you will, or sort of hot spots for violent criminal activity, is taking their liquor licenses away. Now, we can't do that alone and we can't do that directly, but we can certainly use the process that's in place with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to get the process started for having their licenses taken away if they are not going to do what it takes to make sure their patrons and the area is safe.
How do you target some of those neighborhoods or businesses or entertainment districts, like you said, without making some of the business owners in those areas that are legally operating and contributing to the tax base feel harassed?
Oh, we absolutely, look, we are partners with our business owners and with the establishments in areas like Deep Ellum. We work very closely with them. The council members represent those areas. are in constant contact with those folks. And this is not about being onerous or burdensome to anyone who's obeying the law, but this is about acknowledging the reality of things, which is there are some problem establishments who, once we put them on notice that we need them to take some corrective action and do some things, if they're not willing to do those things or they're in violation of the law, we're going to use every tool that's in our tool belt to make sure that our residents are safe.
In order to make some of these public safety initiatives work, in order to pass a budget, you really do need cooperation. The summer got off to a rather rocky start with the relationship with you and the city manager. How are things now?
Yes, there's been tension in the past, and I have definitely made my intentions clear to do everything I can, and that includes putting pressure on the people who report to us at the city council level and who are supposed to be running the city. So I feel good about the relationship. I think we are working well together at this point, for sure. On permitting, I think he's getting the message for sure that I'm not going to stop talking about public safety, and I think our budget that he's proposing this year reflects that priority of public safety and tax reduction. So I would say that the relationship has been made better and that the city of Dallas is reaping benefits from our willingness to sort of, lay out there, pretty plainly and publicly our different ideas about where the city should go. And I think we're moving forward together and on the same page.
We're closing in on that time of year where I can say, how about some football? So let's talk a little bit about this plan that you have. How serious are you about potentially recruiting a second NFL team to the North Texas area to specifically play in Dallas?
While I'm a huge, lifelong, diehard Cowboys fan and always will be, I was basically letting everyone know that I would be open to having a football team that played in the opposite conference from the Cowboys, playing in the city of Dallas as opposed to one of our suburbs. I'm open to any professional sports team that wants to come to our city and play downtown or play in one of the many spaces in our city that can maybe accommodate professional sports. So I formed a committee and we're going to look at all those options. But our top priority right now, to be honest with you, is making sure that we maintain, that we continue to be the home of the Dallas Mavericks and the Dallas Stars. They do play in the city of Dallas, which we're very proud of. But if we can attract more, we will.
Mayor Eric Johnson, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, key takeaways from last week's primaries. Donald Trump's allies won in several states, and Democrats are energized by Kansas. We're going to discuss on the Roundtable next. All right, it is time now for Reporters Roundtable. Matthew Watkins from the Texas Tribune is with us again. Thanks for sticking around, Matthew. We also have Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram joins us always, every week. We appreciate it. Good to see you, Bud.
Hi, Teresa.
And Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer here at WFAA TV in Dallas. Great to see you, Bernadine.
Hi, Teresa.
All right, let's kick things off by talking about those primaries from last week. Donald Trump's allies definitely got a boost in several states. Then Democrats definitely see hope in the turnout and the result of that referendum vote in Kansas. So let's talk about key takeaways. What do you think, Matthew?
I thought that Kansas vote was really interesting and notable. A conservative state, a Republican state, voting by a wide margin to, maintain abortion rights in the state. Of course, things are a little bit different in Texas. You can't have that kind of citizen-led initiative. But I think Democrats will be hopeful that maybe they can use abortion to drive, strong turnout in the midterm elections, maybe fare a little bit better than things were looking a few months ago.
All right, Bud, I know everybody hesitates to make predictions, but what do you think? Does this predict anything for Texas in November?
Well, the problem with this, what we saw in Kansas, was that voters like Democratic issues. They just don't seem to like Democrats. Democratic candidates, once you bring all the baggage in, then they don't quite come out as clearly. It's not as cut and dried as the vote in Kansas was.
That might be the quote of the day. All right, Bud, thank you. Bernadine, your thoughts?
Well, you know what? I think that we're going to see just how much that abortion vote is affecting a number of people, particularly those women who think that their rights have been taken. And I think that that's what you're seeing. And we're going to see some of that in Texas. But now, remember, Texas is so red. And the way that it has been carved out in terms of legislative districts, it might not be as cut and dry. But you're going to see the women's vote, and it's going to be, it's not as happy as some of the Republicans would want.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Arizona as well. Matthew, that primary really only fuels a lot of the rhetoric we've heard from some Republicans who really want Governor Abbott to declare a, quote, invasion down at the border. But the worry is that that could spur hate crimes like what happened in El Paso, the anniversary of which was just this last week. What do you think? Does the governor really have to operate along a fine line?
Yeah, there have been people who've been calling for him to kind of declare that invasion for months now. And so far he has resisted. I think one of the reasons, as you noted, is that that invasion language was the language used by the El Paso shooter 3 years ago. And he, after that shooting, expressed regret about using that term in the past.
Bud, your thoughts?
Well, the fact of the matter is Governor Abbott doesn't have to declare an invasion. He has to keep doing things that are tough on border crossers. He's loading up the bus and sending them to New York. He may be loading them up, sending them to Beverly Hills next, and try to scatter them all over the country and kind of share the problem. In Arizona, they want to send them back across the border, but it's Arizona that sent the case to the Supreme Court that proved that that wasn't legal. And the Supreme Court ruled that Arizona could not enforce immigration law.
All right, Bernadine, quickly, what do you think?
You know what? I totally agree with Bud. Why would Abbott change course? What he's doing is working. Declaring an invasion would do nothing but create a distraction. Presently, he's doing okay. Busing the immigrants to different cities is working for him.
All right, we'll leave it there. Bernadine, Bud, Matthew, thank you, and thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great Sunday.